Welcome back to the show, Town Manager Mark Ells.
How are you?
I'm well. It's been a long, hot summer.
Great summer.
Great summer. Did you have fun?
Very busy. I always have fun. Yeah, it's all good.
So many topics to discuss, but we're going to take one that's been in the news recently and has some opportunities for the town of Barnstable. Vineyard Wind is off our shores. What can you tell us about that project and the position of town of Barnstable?
Well, Vineyard Wind was awarded an area after the federal government put out a public solicitation process to award grant areas off of southeast of Martha's Vineyard for wind energy, wind turbines.
Okay.
And they were awarded that area, and it's potentially a two-phase project. They have received authorization to proceed with the first phase. It doesn't mean that they'll do the second phase. They have to be awarded that as well. That will come in the next, I think, 2 to 4 years, that determination. So they originally came to both the town of Yarmouth and Barnstable with a proposal for landfall at one of the two locations. I think they originally had 3, but then they reduced it down to 2 locations, one in Yarmouth and one in Barnstable at Covell's Beach.
Okay.
And the way that and there's multiple processes ongoing at this right now with the state, federal, local governments, and then within each of those, various agencies. And the processes with the federal and the state government have various boards and agencies reviewing their work. They have had, and if the public's unaware of this, they should know that they have had public comment opportunity, and they will, depending on where they are in the process, potentially have additional public comment, public hearing opportunities. So the public should be watching this to comment however they feel about the projects. The town of Barnstable has been in discussions to date with them. The town of Barnstable has commented on the federal and state processes that are in place. The Energy Facility Siting Board process is one. The other is through the MEPA process, Mass Environmental Protection Act. We've submitted comments on both of those. In general, we're supportive of wind power. We're supportive of if it's done in a safe way that doesn't impact negatively our community, our resources. The immediate concern in this most recent proposed project with Vineyard Wind was related to the cable and the cable landing, and not that they will do that, because I'm assuming they will, and it'll either be in Yarmouth or Barnstable. We're dealing with the Barnstable side.
Sure.
Our concern is that somehow a future project that isn't located, X number of miles southeast of Martha's Vineyard, perhaps one in the Sound, which we were opposed to in a previous project, and I assume we still would be, could interconnect somehow into that cable. So a big part of our discussion is no, that can't happen. If that can happen under whatever you're giving to us, it's a non-starter. So they've said, okay, we agree, and they're working with our attorneys and others to make sure that it's structured in such a way that we prevent that from happening. The other major issue is relevant to the substations. Now, whether it comes in through Yarmouth or Barnstable, both substations are in the town of Barnstable, where this would interconnect. There are existing substations in the town of Barnstable. In addition, as part of this project, there would be in phase one substation. It would be up by the substation in Independence Park. In a second phase, it would be over in the Oak Street area. And it would be a second substation over by the Oak Street substation, which is the one right when you go over the highway coming from Old Stage Road, Race Lane. You go up Oak Street, you go over the highway, you look to the right, there's a substation.
Yep.
There'd be another one there. So, and again, that second phase is unknown. They haven't been awarded. They haven't been authorized for that yet. They have been authorized for the first phase. So much of our discussions has been around the landfall. It really hasn't been, even though during the state and federal permitting phase, we've had many comments about issues relevant to the cable under the sea and the turbines. But during our process here in Barnstable, it's been focused on the landfall, it's been focused on the cable run, and it's been focused on the substation. So immediately we agreed with any substation in town, both those that are existing right now with Eversource and any proposed new ones, we're looking for them to be closed systems, modern systems, so that in the event that something happens at the substation, the fluids that are in that substation don't get into the ground, into the groundwater, create contamination that could certainly impact our public water supplies and our general water resource. They've agreed to all of that.
Okay.
Actually, during the process, we had forced this issue. NSTAR, rather Eversource, has many of these across the Cape. I can tell you there's only one in Barnstable that's a modern closed system, and it's because we forced that to occur.
Right.
So we're in separate conversations with Eversource about every single substation being upgraded into closed systems, because they all have this fluid, and in the event that they leak or there's a fire or an explosion, and it releases it, not only can it drop to the ground, but if it's a windy day, it can blow it and create even greater issues for these contaminants. So that's a whole separate discussion that's going on with us. But Vineyard Wind has agreed to all of that. And there's all sort of other issues that are associated with the landing, the cable run, and the substation construction. Obviously, a cable run is much like any other utility, so it's really a construction project. So wherever they would run that, and we have, you know, the general routes if they come in through Yarmouth. Actually, there's minimal roads they'll be in if they come in through Yarmouth. They're actually hoping to go through the lands just south of the Mid-Cape Highway under what will be a future bike trail, and then connect into the Independence Park. If they come in through Colville's Beach, then they would route a little bit to the east and then north up through Strawberry Hill Road, and then cut over to the Independence Park, substation. So they'd have to restore the roads, repair any impact, restore roads. We've asked for other mitigation relative to Colville's Beach, restore the site, repave the parking, give money toward complete rehabilitation of the comfort station. There's other mitigation fee within this. Outside of and that's this community host agreement that the council has authorized, they at the last meeting authorized the town manager to enter into with Vineyard Wind. And we expect that to happen. We're still in negotiations. This is very complicated. We want to protect our community, certainly, and we want to make sure that we are compensated appropriately. Now, in parallel with this are the taxes that will be generated by the utility locating in our community. Now, you can imagine that the landfall, the cable, and the substation all have value, and that value would be utilized to calculate the taxes that would be generated by locating this utility here. Same for Yarmouth. So depending on which way they go, that tax will vary. And That's being done separately through Ed O'Neill, our assessor, with Vineyard Wind, to Mark Milne, to me, so that I know cumulatively phase one what it could be, both scenarios. Cumulatively phase two, which is a little more difficult because that's not even a project that's anything more than anticipated at this point, but what that might be. And, you know, having discussions with them, because phase one could land at either place. Phase two would absolutely come through Colville's in their proposal. I say that, I don't control any of this. I only control what they propose to us. That's one of the other things. Many people have called me and said, well, why don't you do this? I am not the proponent of the town of Barnstable is not the proponent of the project. So we respond to what they do. And from time to time, they've changed. So then we always need to position ourselves to certainly protect the interests of the town of Barnstable, but not in opposition to the proposed wind project. We're not in opposition. We're trying to work through the details of it with the anticipation that it will happen, and it may happen in different ways. So that's what's going on with Vineyard Wind. This is close. They're looking to start construction next year.
That close? I didn't realize it was.
Oh yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, absolutely. They've got deadlines coming up this fall at the EFSB. They've got an extended MEPA process for additional comment there. No, I don't know if that will be what will result. But we're also talking at Colville's. Well, if they come in through Colville's phase one, I don't want them tearing up the parking lot again in 2 years. So make your investment. It's your risk, but I don't want you coming in twice. If we're going to go through this process, lay the conduit, prep this whole thing for both phases, and second phase doesn't come, that was your risk. So those are the sorts of discussions, because, you know, this is a big ask on their part of our community. And if they're going to do it once, do it right, and then let our residents go back to utilizing this. I mean, this isn't the only landfall on Cape Cod. It's probably a half a dozen, and maybe more, but half a dozen or so I know. A bunch in Falmouth, a couple coming off Nantucket, one of them coming right up Ocean Street. And so we've had this in our community before. The former project had fluids in the cable that we were concerned about, as well as a substation. This one doesn't. These are solid cable. And so that concern isn't there. The substation, absolutely. So that's what's been going on. And it's been we've been meeting twice a week probably with Vineyard Wind for months, working through the details of this. And now we're really to a point where, unless they change something, every time they change something, you know, you change one thing, you step back, 10 steps, because then you have to look at the overall impact of that change, not just that one little area, because truly it can have that sort of impact. So this is going to go back and forth, and I'm not on a timeline for this. My objective is to make sure we protect the town of Barnstable and we're equitably compensated for what's being proposed.
Right. So just to give a residents an overview, this may be the first time that they're hearing about it.
Yeah.
Some residents do that. They're not going to see wind turbines off of Colville Beach.
No.
They're not going to see a big substation sitting in Colville's Beach area or in the parking lot.
No, it's 25 feet underground. It's a cable.
They're not going to see it.
With a conduit.
With a conduit. It's already been permitted. It's looked at some of the issues of life in the ocean and some of those other concerns for environmental, and that this is a revenue generating source for the town of Barnstable if it comes through.
It would be, both in taxes and in mitigation and in restoration of our assets as they move through them. For example, our roads, our beach, whatever the useful life of the road is, wherever we're at in that useful life, they're going to give us a brand new road to DOT standards. So that's part of what they have to do.
Right.
So that's, yeah, you're right, though, that we're compensated for that, both in taxes and then as a result of that construction or the mitigation that we've asked for to offset some of the concerns we might have, specifically groundwater and resource protection.
Right. So we'll tackle, I think, groundwater and resource protection on our next talk. But when we look at wind and as this is a source of power, this is important not just to our community, but all of Massachusetts and beyond, that we start to move away from some of these types of substances that generate some not so good things in the environment. You know, we don't want people drilling oil off our shores. This seems to be one of those power sources that we can use that's less, I guess, degenerative to our environment.
Yes, I think that wind, all of the alternative sorts of energies that are energy generators that are out there need to be considered, and each of them comes though with a challenge or potential concern. And you know, it's market driven, it's you know, public driven in the sense that it's got to be something that people are knowing and accepting and understanding of, you know, and then politically it is, what does the state of Massachusetts want? What does the town of Barnstable want? And how will the and I say political, I don't mean that in a negative sense, I mean
Right.
what are the laws and the policies? Because that's how those are created by our elected officials. What are the laws and the policies in place relative to this? And what is the vision at a state and then a local level relative to this? And then we work in that direction. So, but absolutely, wind power it can be a very good
Sure.
thing in the marketplace, you know, socially, et cetera. It can be a very good thing.
Right.
And you know, I don't know historically that we've always calculated the total cost of something in doing it the way the more traditional utilities have produced, meaning is there a detriment as a result of the product using a fossil fuel, let's say, in a process?
Right.
Are you really calculating the cumulative cost of that? Or are you just looking at the per unit cost that the utility's selling the electricity at? And so it's interesting. I
Right.
mean, it's I like choice, so I like the fact that we're going to have multiple ways to generate electricity, and let's hope we have multiple ways to purchase it so it stays competitive and
Right.
gets our I mean, some of what has been said would suggest that this can be more cost effective. I think there was an article recently in the paper about that.
It was just that was going to be my closing, is how can residents really come up to speed on this particular project and what it means for the town of Barnstable? Are there some resources that you've used in the past? Or, I mean, we can read articles in the newspaper. They don't always give us the full picture of what we might be looking to learn.
Well, I think anytime you want to understand a subject matter, you really want to look into as many sources as you can, because if you only use one, it's only going to be their opinion.
Right.
So I would encourage anybody and everybody on every issue to look at it as many ways as they can and then formulate their own opinion. If they can't find anything on it, I know that Vineyard Wind has a website.
Okay.
I've had a lot of people ask me for links to it. So I think we're going to post their link somewhere on our website.
Okay.
I'm talking with Lynn Poyant, our communications director, also our community services director. Lynn wears many hats for us. And think about where the best place might be. So when people, one of the things I don't want to do where I'm not the proponent of the project is to try to communicate in whatever snapshot of time I have looked at something where that project is, because the proponent, unbeknownst to me, may have gone in a different direction.
Right.
And you have to be very careful of that. So I would much rather say, go look at what they presented at public hearing at the EFSB. There's a PowerPoint. I have that link. I gave it to the council at the last meeting. If there's videotaped meetings that we do of them presenting, great. It's got to be a time reference though, because if it's been 6 months, the story could be different. I have certainly been sharing with the council on Channel 18 on Thursday evenings, usually in the first half an hour, where I am in the discussions between the town and Vineyard Wind. So if you want to go back and look, you can go right on our website and go onto Channel 18 and town council meetings and watch that first little piece of the video. And I've been doing that now for quite a while. I mean, even since last year, I think I've been doing this. So it'll give you a quick, a 3-minute snapshot of what's been going on and how it's progressing. And then ask, and as we get information, we know of when hearings will, we've had people call us and say, when can we comment on the MIPA process? Well, that's a state defined process with state hearings and deadlines for submittal, and I'll typically have Charlie McLaughlin from our legal staff talk with the individual or the business and provide them the information so that they can comment or just watch. So that's the way. Excellent. It's just to keep the lines of communication open. And I had a lot of people from Yarmouth calling because they're all opposed. Well, I shouldn't say they're all. The group of people that have called me seem to be opposed to the project and not really sharing with me why. I believe it's because it's coming in through the sound and they don't like that. But I don't know that. And so I've been sharing any and all that we've had. I stay in constant communication with the town administrator in Yarmouth, who's kind of my counterpart there, and have said to him, if it comes in through Yarmouth, we're ready. If it comes in through Colville's, we'll be ready. And right now, Yarmouth's the primary, Colville's is the secondary, but that could change in the next, I think that's, I say that because back in April, that's the way they presented it to the EFSB.
All right.
But they're talking it like it could be either.
Okay.
Vineyard
We're ready.
Wind. Well,
Either
as
way.
ready as information allows us to be.
Okay.
So,
Fantastic.
yeah, if we got to do more, we'll do more.
We will. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thanks for
Mark.
having me.